Why are giant companies like Hyundai and LG coming to Indonesia? Because EV batteries run on nickel. USGS data shows Indonesia holds the world's largest nickel reserves. Since around 2022, the global shift to electric vehicles, EVs, picked up speed. Automakers committed to battery electric fleets, and with that, one metal rose to prominence: nickel. High nickel cathodes in lithium-ion batteries offer higher energy density. According to reports, an average EV battery pack can contain around 40 kilograms of nickel. As more EVs rolled off production lines, demand for nickel began to surge. Global mine production increased from roughly 3.3 million tons in 2022 to around 3.6 million tons in 2023. In effect, the EV boom created an open lane, and Southeast Asia soon became central to the race for nickel supply. Enter Indonesia. Deep in its archipelago lie massive nickel laterite deposits, primarily in Sulawesi and North Maluku. According to the U.S. Geological Survey, Indonesia held about 55 million tons of nickel reserves in 2024, accounting for roughly 42% of global reserves. In simple terms, almost half the world's nickel sits under Indonesian soil. But production only soared later. In 2023, Indonesia produced roughly 1.8 million tons of nickel, over 50% of global nickel output by some estimates. That gave the country a potent combination: vast reserves rapidly increasing production. It positioned Indonesia not just as supplier of raw ore, but as a key player in the EV battery supply chain. The transformation didn't happen by accident. In 2014, Indonesia banned exports of raw nickel ore, a strategic move to force processing and retain value inside the country. By restricting raw ore exports, the government aimed to boost domestic smelting and downstream battery material production. Investment surged into smelters and industrial parks. One such example, the Indonesia Morowali Industrial Park, MIP, in Sulawesi became a hub for processing nickel. By 2025, Indonesia had dozens of nickel smelters under operation or construction, a dramatic shift in its mining ecosystem. With reserves and policy aligned, Indonesia attracted the world's battery and automakers. While some agreements are confidential, industry reporting shows major foreign direct investment and joint ventures for nickel and battery cathode production in Indonesia. These include projects by major miners and refiners, and link directly to EV value chains. In essence, Indonesia positioned itself as more than a raw material country; it aimed to be a battery ingredient hub. Indonesia's rise reshaped much of the global nickel market. One analyst described the country as the hypothetical OPEC of nickel. When one country holds 50% or more of global production or reserves, it can influence supply chains, pricing, and downstream investment decisions. For EV manufacturers, securing supply from Indonesia means engaging with its policy, infrastructure, and logistics, from mines to smelters to shipping. However, Indonesia's nickel boom carries clear risks. Most of the country's nickel is laterite ore, which requires energy-intensive refining methods, such as HPL, and therefore tends to produce higher CO2 emissions when powered by fossil fuels. Environmental reports have documented real impacts around Indonesian smelting parks, including air and water pollution and high local emissions where captive coal plants power smelters. There's also a resource risk. Rapid smelter and processing build-out can outpace exploration, meaning high-grade ore could be used up faster than new reserves are proven, a factor that would raise input costs and shorten the period of advantage. So while Indonesia is a leading producer today, long-term planning on energy sources, exploration, and environmental management is essential to keep that position sustainable. Demand for nickel tied to batteries is forecast to grow substantially if EV adoption continues. The IEA scenarios show nickel demand for clean energy applications rising sharply through 2040 under multiple cases. For Indonesia, this creates three strategic priorities. 1. Move further downstream into battery components and cathode material to capture more value. 2. Decarbonize refining, for example by using lower carbon power sources for smelters. And 3. Balance export and domestic value policies so the country keeps more of the economic benefit. If Indonesia executes on these priorities, it can become a durable node in the global EV supply chain, not just a source of raw ore, but a regional battery materials hub. Nickel isn't glamorous, but it is essential. Countries that secure sustainable, reliable nickel supply, and build processing capacity responsibly, will shape how the EV transition unfolds. Indonesia has the reserves and the momentum, but the path forward must include environmental safeguards and long-term planning if the country is to translate deposits into lasting national advantage.